Good evening, Lewis. We are here. It is September 15th, 2015, in the year of our Lord, 8 p.m. Eastern. We have Matt Steinberg helping us this evening with questions, etc. Lewis, should I go over the logistics first? Is that appropriate?
Yeah, please. I think that's a good idea.
All right. So we're going to take two types of questions. One type of question will be for people who have a microphone and a camera, and they will be able to actually be on screen with Lewis and with me. The other type of question is text questions, and you can submit text questions, and then we will take those as well. So we will sort of take them not necessarily in the order that they come in, but in the order that Matt Steinberg, who we are delegating complete power on this entire thing to, Lewis, decides that we will take the questions. And that's, I think, going to be the deal, right, Lewis? Do you want to set any ground rules as to any types of questions or topics that would be out of bounds, so to speak?
No, I don't think so, but of course we reserve the right to not answer any question, to plead the fifth on anything asked, right? Is that fair?
I think that that's perfectly fair. And, just to not taint the question pool in any way, Lewis, I would advise you not to give anything away in terms of what types of questions you might shut down. And that I think will be fair to all. So, Matt, we will just sort of bloviate here for a bit until you let us know via the producer chat that you have someone who's ready to go with a question. And then once we have that, I will call for the question, Lewis, and we will be sort of off and rolling. A programming note, I will be watching the Republican debate tomorrow night. Lewis, I know that you're absolutely titillated by it. And we will be doing coverage of that on Thursday. And then there may be an instant reaction YouTube clip that is done tomorrow night, depending on how late it goes, Lewis, because I do need to get a reasonable amount of sleep, as you know, not quite as much as you usually, not 10 to 12 hours a night, but like to get 7.5 to 8. There may be an instant review done. Okay, Matt, why don't we give us the first question, be it a text question or a video question. First question is from Sam Miller. Rick Perry recently became the first to drop out of the race. Who do you think will be next? Well, is Bobby Jindel even still running? I guess he is. I think he's going to be in the debate tomorrow night. What about, Chris Christie is absolutely zero traction. There are so many people right now, Lewis, that have clearly no shot. While you talk, I'll pull up the list and then we'll see who's going to drop out.
Yeah, it would have to be someone obscure, I think, like Jindal. And I don't know, maybe a Kasich. I'm really not sure. Rick Perry, despite the name recognition, had such a miserable campaign, and he dropped. And now there are questions about the money that came from super PACs, and there are some questions as to what's going to happen with that. And it was just a total joke, like Rick Perry is. So it's going to be one of the small fries, like Jindal, but I'm not sure who.
I mean, let's just go through it quickly. Jeb is staying in. Ben Carson is staying in for now. I think Chris Christie could be gone soon. Ted Cruz is raising a lot of money on this, even though he's not going to win, so he might stay in. Carly Fiorina, we know that there's other Republican candidates that want her to stay in because of the way in which she can criticize Hillary Clinton. Uh, Jim Gilmore, I completely forgot about. I mean, I guess he's in, but he's nowhere to be found. Lindsey Graham is a loser. He'll be gone soon. Huckabee will likely stay in for a while. Jindal is a candidate to leave soon. I hope Kasich isn't the next guy because he and George Pataki are sort of the more reasonable guys. Rand Paul and Marco Rubio have essentially drifted into oblivion, and then Santorum and Walker. I think Walker may be in this for the long haul. Rick Santorum, I don't know how long he's going to last. So a lot of possibilities there for who is going to drop out next. But I think Jindal is a good possibility if you were going to bet on who's dropping next. I mean, the guy is making no impact whatsoever. Okay, Matt, let's take the next question here. It's always a surprise, Lewis, whether it will be a video or whether it will be a text question. No, Matt does not want us to take the next question yet. He has completely put the kibosh on that. Lewis, a question that, oh, okay, no, I have a question for Lewis, but I'll wait on that.
Well, we have
Next
a
question
question
is
here.
from, Yeah, Jeff Fuller. Donald Trump seems to be defying logic with his popularity and longevity compared to seasoned politicians. Do you think he can carry it all the way to the nomination? I absolutely do not think that he can carry this nonsense all the way to the nomination. And I don't say that because it's ultimately the Republican voters that will put a stop to it. I'm convinced, Louis, that the Republican Party establishment is going to put a stop to the Trump thing one way or another eventually.
It seems like they are trying to find the skeletons in the closet and they are trying to dig up a lot of dirt on Trump. Understandable. But I'm not convinced that he will not be the Republican nominee. Not yet. I think that he, at the moment, it seems that he still has a chance. So I'm going to say that I'm not going to count him out yet.
Okay,
Just
but
people
Louis,
like his outrageousness. It's working.
if I may, when you say you think he could be the nominee, what type of path do you imagine? Do you imagine he just keeps polling 35% and there's enough people in the Republican primaries that 35% gets you a plurality of the delegates and he just sort of powers through one primary after another? I mean, do you see that as likely?
That's the only thing that could happen. I mean, there are a lot of people running in that primary, and so 35% is not negligible. I mean, that's pretty huge when you look at the field, right? I mean, it means something.
Yeah, 35. I mean, it certainly means something when you have 16 candidates, that's for sure. But we'll see. I mean, look, you have a more bullish outlook on Trump than I do. I think there is no chance that this guy gets the nomination, and every day it's more and more of an embarrassment. Okay, Matt, if you don't have another question for us, I have a question for Lewis, which maybe I will get to. People have been emailing in wondering, we did the big Lewis Votes special a few years ago. Um, are you planning on voting in the 2016 election? You will be voting in Massachusetts, of course. And interestingly, this may be a situation where your vote really could make an impact in the primary, depending on what happens between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton.
Yes. Well, I have to re-register, I believe, because I think when I was in Texas, um, you know how strict they are here with voter registration.
Sure.
I think that I missed my opportunity when that mail got sent in. I don't even know what happened to it. It didn't get to me, but I am planning on voting. Yes. If not, the primary will probably be more important than the presidential election.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine a situation where the presidential is going to be tight in Massachusetts, although we don't yet know what sort of other races and potential ballot initiatives will be there. So we will continue to follow that. But I think a lot of people will be relieved that Lewis will indeed be voting. Matt, let's take the next question. I believe we have a video question here, which I anticipate will be popping up soon. And we will sort of, play it by ear as it comes. Are things happening? We have Jay Voss.
Oh, wow.
Jay, we
Wow.
can hear
This is the
you.
first
We
time
can
I've ever
see
done
you.
this, so bear
And
with me.
let's do the Jay Voss coming in like a runaway train, just with a lot to say. Jay, we have a slight delay, so let's do the best we
Okay.
can not to talk over each other. I turn it over to you. I anticipate a very good question. Go ahead.
Well, I produce horror films with my friends, so I'm very involved in pre-production stuff. And I just want to know how you all do your pre-production activities, how you plan a program, and how much time is, let's say, to get, that wacko Christian guy Brian on. I mean, what do you do to get him on if you want to interview him? How much lead time
All
do you
right.
give him, and what do you do to prepare programs?
Lewis, this is a fantastic question from Jay Voss. I will give people a peek behind the curtain when it comes to both the production of the show and the production of interviews. So I'll do interviews first. The process we've worked out, Lewis, and if I may say, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn, it is quite a well-oiled process when Lewis decides to participate. And sometimes Lewis will say, no, we're not interviewing that person, I'm not doing it. But putting those situations aside, generally I will see something that is interesting and I'll sort of tell Lewis, this is the guest, this is the topic, let's see what we can do. Then Lewis, you take over and fill in the blanks for us.
Okay, so after Dave expresses interest in someone or something interesting catches my eye, we decide that it's a good person to interview. I will find a way to contact that person if one hasn't already been presented to me, and if they are willing to come on via Skype, they have a working webcam and we can see them and all of that, then we simply work out a time. I fit it into the schedule, and then Dave does his thing in the preparation of questions.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that sometimes we will book interviews with 24 or 48 hours notice. This isn't the ideal thing because we like to have a little more planning time available. Sometimes we get booked out further ahead, and I actually like that, Lewis. And right now we actually have, I'm looking at our schedule, the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 14. We are booked 14 shows out. And remember, at 5 shows per week, this is almost 3 weeks out. So, of course, things get shifted around for breaking news. But we are currently booked out into October with the entire plan. And quite frankly, Lewis, I really like that because it's good to know what we're going to have coming up.
Yeah, and when you have so many people that you're dealing with, of course, it's not uncommon for someone to say, I need to change this, I can't make it. Sometimes people forget altogether, and we have to be vigilant about reminding people when the interview is coming up. And I mean, that's pretty much it. We've got it, like Dave said, it's a well-oiled machine right now.
And then as far as the regular show, the stories, and we'll get right back to you, Jay. As far as the regular show stories, usually throughout the day, if I see a story that's interesting, I'll email it to myself from my phone. And then the morning of the show, I will go through and whittle down from, could be 10, 15, 20, 25 stories to what I think are like the 7 to 9 stories that we want to cover that day. And usually I do that around I love sometimes to have it done by 9 a.m., but more realistically, it's done by 10 or 10:30. So what do you think, Jay? I hope I've answered the question.
You have, and I guess you accept story suggestions from viewers as well.
Oh, absolutely. I would say a
Hello?
third to half of the stories, Lewis, actually are sent to us by the audience, which is fantastic because it makes our job easier if we know what it is that the audience wants to hear us talk about.
And
Well,
occasionally
thank.
someone will have a story that they themselves have experienced. It's something that happened to them. It's something that happened to a friend of theirs, and they choose to contact us before anyone else. And those are the stories that tend to be the most viral, as we are the first people to put it out there.
Absolutely. So
Well, I'm in
great
Vermont.
question, Jay.
I'm in Vermont, and I know you're covering a lot of the Sanders campaign, but the general media doesn't seem to be. But that's our view in Vermont. We just find that even the local NPR station isn't really covering it as much as we would like.
Yep, absolutely.
Anyway,
Jay, thank you very much. Excellent, excellent questions from Jay Lewis. We will continue covering Bernie Sanders, and we will see what happens. Matt, let us know. Do we have a text question next or video? Give me a sense of what we're dealing with here, and we will process together. Okay, Matt, we have a video question. I'm ready, Lewis. Let's see who it is.
I'm ready.
Mike Harris. Mike is there.
Yes.
He seems to have a lovely library, sort of. I've always wanted a library, Lewis, but I've never had a place that's big enough to have one. Okay, Mike, you're on.
Okay, thanks. Hi, guys. Can you
Hi.
hear me okay?
Oh, you're coming in clear.
Okay, good. It's a political question and also a question about your organization. First, the organization, how are you coming with hiring for the new position
All
of
right. So
assistant host?
as far as hiring, I want to announce, Lewis, that we have made the first hire, and it is producer Louis Motamedi, who has been engaged now to be a full-time production manager for the David Pakman Show. But that's the only hiring we're going to do really before we get to Boston. And then once we get settled, Lewis, we've got to get the studio set up, and we really have to sort of create the infrastructure where we can even bring in someone else. And there's some questions now as to, from a business strategy standpoint, whether it makes sense for the next person to be an in front of the camera person, a tech production person, or actually on the advertising sales side. But Lewis, that's a decision that is for a month or two down the road.
Yeah, that we have so much going on right now that it's tricky to start thinking about that. But we do hope to have another personality on the show. We just it's too early right now to think about who.
All right, so Mike, now we will take the political question.
Okay, I'm really concerned about the Republican politicians pandering to the Christian right, especially Huckabee, Cruz. They're getting people and encouraging them to subvert the laws. And I wanted to get your thoughts about that, and the Oath Keepers also.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as the Oath Keepers, I think our opinions on the Oath Keepers are sort of pretty clear, and we've talked about that. I think the more interesting question is the way in which the Republican candidates, Lewis, have very successfully divided or convinced people that there is more of a divide on more issues than there really is. And I think that the more populist candidates, and this includes not only Bernie Sanders, but also Green Party candidate Jill Stein, who I am pleased to announce we will be interviewing in a week or two, are saying things that appeal to a lot of people, right? Once you get past the labels, oh, we should not have this level of wealth inequality, and it's okay to tax the richest people to sort of reduce some level of that inequality. Some basic level of health care should be provided by the government even if you can't pay. And that, Lewis, I think is sort of like a counteracting force to what Mike is talking about, which is using things like abortion and gay marriage and science and education to divide people and to raise money on the backs of everything from bigotry to ignorance.
Well, yeah, these candidates do seem to be cheerleading and applauding the breaking of laws, Kim Davis, these other magistrates. But I think you've always had to appeal to that crowd. I just think right now, these topics are just so more heated, and there's so much more happening with the Supreme Court rulings and all of that, that it's just way more pronounced than ever before. And they're still just trying to appeal to the religious right like they always do. But it has become incredibly outrageous. I'm not sure, Trump, I would say, is the one candidate who doesn't seem to be pandering like crazy to those people, interestingly enough.
Yeah, well, Trump is the guy who's getting the most attention. But also, if you go back to that first debate, the one guy who seemed willing to take, number one, actual positions on issues, and number two, relatively compassionate positions, although we know he has stuff in his background that is less than compassionate, is John Kasich. He was actually talking about issues, and he didn't seem like a nut. And it's sad that he's getting very, very little attention, although I think I saw that maybe in his home state of Ohio, he's doing a little better than that. So yes, Mike, thank you for the question, and I share your concerns, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, Mike Harris, there he is. Matt Steinberg tells me, who is the moderator of this evening's event, tells me we have another question, and it is, I am told, a video question, and we will take it whenever Matt says it's time. Algons22 is joining us. And we see him. He has a Got Alpaca shirt, which I love. Alpacas, of course, many alpacas in my native Argentina. No question about that. Okay, Algons, you're on.
So my question is about Hillary's strategy and Bernie's strategy as well, given the surge of Trump. I'm assuming that, I would guess that when Hillary decided to run, she was prepared to discuss policy, go up against Democrats, go up against Republicans. But now Trump is sort of this blowhard, bully type of person, making fun of people's appearances. Nothing seems to stick to him, but nonetheless his strategy is quite abrasive. And now she has to kind of lower her game to sort of how do you debate a high school bully? And I'm wondering if how she could be effective in that context, given that she and I include Bernie here too, given that they're much more traditionally prepared to debate against realistic candidates.
Well, I think a debate between Hillary and Donald Trump, and by the way, I don't think we will ever see this scenario, as I mentioned earlier. I think a debate between Hillary and Donald Trump would be very different than a debate between Bernie and Donald Trump. I think both Hillary and Bernie would do really well against Trump, but for different reasons. Hillary Clinton would do well because she knows stuff. in contrast with Donald Trump. And that's a pretty good starting point for a debate if you know more stuff than the other candidate. And it would become very clear quickly, Lewis, because Hillary Clinton, say what you will about her sort of ambiguity with regard to certain issues as to how liberal she is, she would absolutely wipe the floor with Donald Trump by actually being able to talk about stuff. We're talking about a guy who has run businesses with his dad's money and actually not done as well as if he had just collected interest on his dad's money, compared to Hillary Clinton, former Secretary of State, former Senator, former First Lady. It would not even be a contest.
If Trump's strategy would work in a debate with Hillary, I mean, he would have a lot more to attack her than he would have more ammunition, I should say, than he would against Bernie. And we know the types of things he says about women. And so I think I would love to see that. And I'm still not convinced that it won't happen. I think it could happen. But I think Bernie would just completely dominate him. Bernie has been slaying anytime he speaks anywhere. And I think he would embarrass Trump big time.
Now, as far as Bernie, I do agree. Bernie Sanders would embarrass Trump in a different way, which is that Bernie Sanders is able to combat. So Trump's appeal is he seems like a sort of straight shooter who just says what he thinks and blah, blah, blah. Bernie Sanders absolutely is the guy who just says what he thinks. He said the same thing at Liberty University yesterday or the day before yesterday that he did in front of liberal audiences that have already volunteered to support him. And I think that Bernie Sanders would be the sort of more intelligent and progressive counterpart to the sort of say whatever I feel attitude of Trump. And I think it would come off really well. So that's my sense, Algons. I think both would do very well, but for different reasons.
Okay, again, I'm not so sure. It's just going up against a very different type of adversary than they've traditionally prepared for and succeeded in preparing for throughout their careers that got them where they are. And I'm not saying it's a better adversary. I'm just saying it's really different. I mean, he's going to just be literally a high school bully. And I don't know if they've ever faced that before. With all Hillary's experience, I think this is the first time she's going up against this kind of a blustery fool type of guy who's going to do quips and I'll get this done, David. It'll be terrific. This kind of stuff. I don't know if she's equipped to respond to this.
Yeah.
They're probably hoping that he'll beat himself.
Yeah, I think that that's a very good point, and I thank you for the question. I think we will not see this. I think this is mostly an academic debate because unlike Lewis, I do not believe we will see Donald Trump on that stage as the Republican nominee debating anybody. Matt Steinberg tells me we have more questions to answer. Let's see what's up. All right, Eliza sending in a text question. Lewis, will you tweet more? I would like to be on camera, but I don't know how to work this. Okay, Lewis, I'm endlessly fascinated by Lewis's Twitter account, and I check it basically daily. And I saw, Lewis, now you're following everybody back who's been following you. Are you enjoying the tweeting, and will you tweet more?
It's fine. I mean, it doesn't seem too different than interactions I would have on Facebook. And if you look at my Facebook page, you'll see that I post things incredibly, incredibly rarely. I've probably posted more things in the past month on Twitter than I have in the past 3 years on Facebook. So I go for quality over quantity, and I will do my best to be more active on Twitter, but I can't just snap my fingers and tweet. It's not that easy for me.
No, Lewis, if you look at Lewis's tweets, you'll see that those are not the types of tweets that you just on a whim tweet. These are carefully crafted statements that, to be coming up with 5 of these a day is certainly not the easiest thing. Okay, great question from Eliza. I will continue to monitor Lewis's tweets and keep everybody abreast of what happens there. Matt, I think you said we had, is it another text question? I'm unsure of what was next. What do we have next? Jeff Fuller. All right, Jeff Fuller says, I love hatriot mail, and I often think about creating a funny, extreme hatriot mail to see if I can get my letter in the segment. How much of hatriot mail do you think is real versus made up? I think most of it is real. And Lewis, I don't want to give away our strategy for vetting hatriot mail because it would allow people to sort of circumvent people are very interested in having their message on Hatriot Mail, understandably so. But we have a system. We have numerous methods. I think that I know for sure of one Hatriot Mail of the 130-something episodes that we've had that was someone seeing if they could get on, and it wasn't really a Hatriot. It was a fan of the show. But and congratulations to them. They did it. But for the most part, Lewis, we have a pretty good process, I feel like, for is it fair to say, Lewis, that we pull Hatriot Mail from venues and people that we don't think would likely even be aware that Hatriot Mail is a thing?
That's probably true. And so, well, I don't think that we have had any fake Hatriot Mails. We have probably had countless Hatriot Mails that have come from trolls who are out there doing this all day, every day, but that doesn't mean that they don't mean what they're typing. It just means that they're trolls and they get off on it and they enjoy it, and that's how they spend their time. So,
yeah, except
I think they are all
except
genuine.
for the one, though. Except for the one that I know. Afterwards, they said, "Hey, I don't hate you guys. I just wanted to see if you guys would run my Hatriot Mail. I love the show." So there's that one that I am aware of.
That we are aware of, yes. So, of course, maybe there are others.
All right. Next is a video question. Matt Steinberg, Arbiter Matt Steinberg, is going to send it along. It is Larry Conley. Larry, we are waiting for Larry's audio. We are waiting for Larry's video. And as soon as that pops up, I'm predicting a very, very interesting question. But Larry's audio and video do not seem to be working right now. Okay. Should we take... Oh, there's Larry. All right, there he is. Larry, welcome.
I don't know if I'm freezing or if the screen's freezing.
Okay, Larry is frozen. Nope, there he is. We can't hear Larry. We can see him, but we can't hear him, right, Lewis? Is that the issue?
I think so. There are some audio issues, Larry.
Okay, let me take Larry off for now. Larry, the most likely issue is you just don't have the right microphone input selected. So if you have a headset and you want to use that, but maybe you have the wrong one selected, you should be able to test that. In the meantime, we will take another text or video question, whatever is available, and we will continue. Michael Morgan, who is your biggest get, and who have you yet to get that you really want to interview? The biggest get, I mean, I think, Lewis, certainly when we had John Kerry on several times, those were good gets. When we had...
Yes, but that was before he was Secretary of State. So, after that, I think it would have been pretty much impossible to get him on.
The thing about the gets is, if we're going by who is really tough to get on, all elected officials are really difficult to get on the show, but quite frankly, we're not that interested in hearing from them, and we find over the years that the audience doesn't really care that much about what an elected official has to say anyway. They mostly speak in talking points. Some of the most interesting interviews we've had, I mean, certainly Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's been on 2 or 3 times, would be at the top of my list as far as fascinating guests. When we had former presidential candidate and Massachusetts Governor Michael Dukakis on, that was really, really interesting. The best gets for me are not necessarily the big names, but they're people that I've followed or admired for a long time. When we had the science fiction author Joe Haldeman on, that interview I was looking forward to in a way that was different from many other interviews with people that are probably way more well-known. Now, as far as who we would like to interview, I feel, Lewis, like we're pretty realistic in terms of who we approach. So we have a generally good sense of who we can and can't get, but it would be really great to be able to get a sitting president or a nominee for president, be it from the Republican or Democratic Party. I wonder, though, Lewis, as a mini project, we should start contacting all of the Republican candidates. I would venture a guess that 1 or 2 of them would be willing to be on the show.
Yeah, perhaps. We have tried reaching out to candidates before, some of the bigger name ones, and it is difficult. For me, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson was definitely one of my favorites. Jesse Ventura was always interesting.
Right.
But yeah, it is tough. It is really tough to get those because when someone's on the campaign trail, I mean, their people do not want to put them in a place where they could embarrass themselves, and I feel like that is, the cause for some apprehension when we reach out to people, especially when we tell them we're not going to give them a list of questions ahead of time.
Yeah, that is a question that we sometimes get, which is please send the questions ahead of time. And I always say, we will, of course, tell you the topics to be discussed, but we don't even usually plan the questions until the same day. So that is not something that we are willing to do, nor even able. Matt Steinberg, send us the next question. That one was from Michael Morgan. And the next one is from Peter Furicchia. If Bernie Sanders wins the nomination, who would you like to have as his running mate? Okay, so I think the popular and sort of obvious and maybe somewhat cliche answer is Elizabeth Warren. And while I think that Elizabeth Warren is fantastic, I wonder whether this is not the best idea for two reasons. Reason number one, Elizabeth Warren may be able to do more in the U.S. Senate than she would as Vice President of the United States. Now, I get it. If something happens to Bernie, then Elizabeth Warren is the president, and that's a really great thing. But that's relatively rare, in knock on wood, in American history. So I think that Elizabeth Warren may be more effective in the U.S. Senate. The other reason I think it may be better for Bernie Sanders not to have Elizabeth Warren would be that two Northeast liberals on a ticket may not be the best way to go. What about a Southern Democrat, right? A Southern Democrat that's maybe not a senator, maybe a former or current governor or something like that. I just think strategically that Elizabeth Warren, while very appealing in many ways, may not be the best choice.
Yeah, I mean, if I were someone helping Bernie make this decision, I'd say, you probably need someone to balance you out. You need to appeal more to those people who are undecided in the election. And who is that? I really don't know. Who would I like to have as his running mate? Yeah, of course, Warren would be incredible. They're both great, but realistically, not a wise decision.
Now, as far as to balance out, John McCain, who wasn't crazy and who could speak in a way that was intelligible, decided to balance out by going someone who was completely nuts and could barely put together a sentence nor even list a single thing that she read. So that's not always the type of balance you want. But I think sort of in terms of the background, I think that some balance would be great. I would be pretty interested in something like a Southern governor, or even somebody like, well, no, it wouldn't be too effective. What about like Claire McCaskill or something like that? I mean, she's not that liberal, but I'm interested in the idea of Bernie Sanders bringing in like a Midwest or Southern female candidate. That could be interesting. I think there's a lot of interesting possibilities. Love the idea of Elizabeth Warren strategically. Don't think it's the best plan. Matt Steinberg, I am ready for the next question. Lewis is ready for the next question. Let's see what it will be. It is from Dan. Thoughts on Syrian refugees? Saudi refusing to take refugees but happy to donate millions for mosques in Germany. Should these mosques be built? Is it even appropriate for Europeans to be worried about possible extremists that might come in as refugees? Okay, the appropriateness question, I don't know. I mean, what we know is that a very tiny percentage of immigrants, refugees, etc., are extremists, are people who are going to commit crimes, etc. Now, Donald Trump has a different view. Donald Trump said he's sure that there's probably some Mexican immigrants who aren't rapists. That's not my view, Lewis. And I think that the broader context here is we understandably are very wrapped up in these imaginary lines that divide our planet called national borders. And we need the context makes sense because we need to be able to establish order and governments, etc. But for the most part, we're talking about people here. We're talking about people who would much rather be able to stay in the country that they know is theirs rather than to be fleeing amidst horrible situations, never to see much of their families again, maybe never to be able to get a job again. This is not their cup of tea, right? So the reaction of these parasites that are less than people that is being seen is a wholesale inappropriate reaction.
It is, but it's a popular reaction, and uh, I mean, I'm just thinking about what people in this country, what some of the people we talk about on the show regularly in this country would be saying if for some reason there were, I don't know, tens of thousands of Syrian refugees somehow coming down from the Canadian border, just as an example, sharing a border with us. Uh, can you imagine? I mean, Dave, we would have like 5 stories a day on
Yeah.
this crisis because of all the crazy things happening. And so, yeah, I think the terrorism thing is kind of second to just having these people that are different from you coming in. I don't know. To me, that's what it seems like what the reaction is. Do we want to touch on these mosques?
Yeah, I do. So the story is that Saudi Arabia said, we can't take any people, which is, by the way, complete BS. Saudi Arabia has plenty of room. Saudi Arabia has plenty of money. Saudi Arabia can take a ton of people. But they said, we'll donate money to Germany because many of these individuals are going to Germany or are trying to get to Germany. But the money is to build mosques in Germany. And of course, not all the refugees are even Muslim. And not to mention the fact that building the mosques is not the most beneficial use of funds for these refugees that are coming into Germany. I find just about everything Saudi Arabia does to be pretty despicable. I think the alliance between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia is pretty despicable. Should the mosques be built? I guess it's a question for Germany. If they say, listen, if we're only going to get the money for mosques, the mosques could be built with dormitories and maybe we could house some people there. I guess it's better than nothing. You might as well take the money, but it also gives Saudi Arabia maybe some sort of leverage and political capital that Germany doesn't want Saudi Arabia to have. So I think it's really their call.
Yeah, I think Germany can handle this influx of migrants, of refugees. I think that's not really a problem. So I don't think that these mosques should be built. I think Germany should not accept the money if it can only be used for these mosques. And if I guess if Saudi Arabia were to offer the money as just aid money in general, then Germany should accept it, but certainly not to build anything like that.
I agree. All right. Matt says we're going to try Larry Conley once more. We could see him before, but we couldn't hear him. Let's see. Larry, we can see Larry. Can we hear Larry?
I hope you can.
We can hear Larry. Larry, it's great to have you on. What's your question tonight?
Rather than the Republicans like Walker worrying about a wall across the Canadian border or Trump on the Mexican border, I think they need to start worrying about what President Putin is up in Syria. Is he stoking the fire that's causing these refugees to flee? Any thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, so a couple thoughts on this. I mean, number one, the idea that a wall is the solution here is obviously ridiculous when you consider people overstaying visas, when you consider all of the other ways in which people can come in and then not go back. The idea of the wall is one that is very, very expensive. We've seen time after time. This was like when we had right-wingers saying, let's stop flights to West Africa to prevent any spread of Ebola, and every doctor that was talked to said that's an absolutely ridiculous thing to do. So the Putin thing, I agree that Vladimir Putin for a while now has been sort of stoking the flames in a lot of different places. We saw it in the flare-up with Ukraine. We're seeing it in Syria. And I don't think, Lewis, that is really a story that is very easy to present on corporate news in a 3-minute segment to a lot of people. You can get sort of wholesale general demonization of Vladimir Putin, but really talking about the role that Vladimir Putin has in what's happening with Syria and now increasingly wrapping in Europe, it's not discussed much, and it is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's hard for me to imagine what he's trying to achieve. I understand what's happening in Ukraine. We've discussed that quite a bit. And now in Syria, yeah, he is arming the Assad regime. And they are saying that, of course, it's to help combat ISIS. Well, it's also helping to fight those, to fight the civil war and those who are trying to overthrow the regime. When I look back at Romney saying that Russia is our #1 geopolitical enemy, it really doesn't sound that outrageous when you start hearing stories about this. It really seems like he's just trying to set the world on fire.
Yeah, I was thinking about that the other day, which is that by chance, Mitt Romney did stumble onto something sort of, afterwards. And at the time, I still don't think that he really knew much of what he was talking about. But we actually are seeing in a number of different places around the world that Russia is a factor and is influencing. It's certainly on the minds of those who are doing foreign policy around the world.
No
Larry,
one's talking
thank
about
you.
it though in these primaries. It's not even an issue. It's not being brought up at all. I think people are afraid to bring it up.
Well, I would like a pledge at tomorrow night's Republican debate. I would like the Republicans who are willing to consider discussing the possibility of addressing some real issues to all put their hands up, and then maybe we'll be able to actually get something discussed. Larry, always a pleasure being joined by you. Thank you for the question.
Welcome.
All right, Larry, glad that Larry got his equipment working there. Next question is from John Greenlee. Are you guys missing Austin and New York City yet, or is it too soon? If so, what are you missing most? Lewis, are you missing Austin?
Well, nights are getting chilly here already, and I may sound like a total wuss to those who are in the Northeast right now, but compared to Texas, yeah, it's getting a little cold. And so I do miss the weather a little bit and the swimming. And, of course, my friends. I left some friends behind, and that's a big change. We had our group, we had our circle, and that was kind of broken up. And of course, I have to mention the beer and the food too, because there's just so much good food and good beer in Austin, and yeah, all of that.
Now, Lewis, I was only in Austin for a few days, and I miss Matt Steinberg, and you were living there, and you don't even address Matt Steinberg in this little soliloquy?
That's because he told me not to in the producer chat, and I was respecting his wishes, but you blew him up, Dave. So that's not my
No,
fault.
Lewis. He said he told you to mention him, not to mention him.
Oh, I thought you said don't mention it. Of course, yes. Matt. Matt was one of my Matt is one of my best friends, and he lived in Austin. He still lives in Austin. So sorry, Matt, I misread. The text is very small on this screen, and I'm trying to do all of these things at once. Sorry, Matt Steinberg.
But I'm curious, what are all the things you're trying to do at once? What do you have going on over there?
I'm trying to read the producer chat. I'm trying to read the viewer chat. I'm looking at questions on the bottom here, and I'm talking to you answering questions.
All right, very, very good. I miss New York City quite a bit. I've talked about it a little bit, I think, on the show. I was just there last weekend, and New York City is great. There's really no other city in the U.S. like it. And we've been visiting Boston in order to prepare for our arrival there. And Boston is an awesome city. I grew up going to Boston. Boston, which is considered by much of our country to be a large city, really does feel small after being in New York City, and it was great to be back in Brooklyn last week and to check out the old neighborhood. And it's just such a great place. The food scene is great. I have many great friends there. There's just so much great stuff there. So I do miss it. But Lewis, being in Boston recently also has reconfirmed that Boston is a fantastic place. It'll be great to be back around Boston sports in an easier way than in New York City, where it was really tough to follow the teams. And we have some great friends in Boston, and I look forward to being there.
I am looking forward to it. It's going to be a change. I don't know a whole lot about the city. I'm going to have to learn this city, but that's kind of a challenge. So I am looking forward to it.
All right, Matt says we have another question, and we'll keep going here. Ramiro says, have you guys ever considered recording these town hall sessions and offering them as downloadable TDPS member perks? Well, we do record these, and we do put them on YouTube, so it's not a members-only perk, but they're available on YouTube. If you go to YouTube, let me do it and see if I can figure out. If you put in David Pakman Town Hall, I would assume that they come up. So we do that, and you can check those out. We make these available after the fact for everybody. And what we should actually do, though, Lewis, is on the member video page, just have a little section just so people don't have to go and search for them. We can have a little section specifically with links to the town halls.
Yeah, I like offering these to everyone because it may make people want to join so that they can get in on this and ask the questions, which is great. And yeah, it's available to everyone.
All right, Matt, let's keep them going. Steve Bowden, I am shocked to see Bobby Jindal, who has a degree in biology, cozy up to creationists. I wonder if he really believes creationist nonsense or if he is just playing along for votes. What's your opinion? Hey, if you're shocked that biologist Bobby Jindal is cozying up to creationists, I have 2 words for you. Ben Carson, world-renowned pediatric neurosurgeon, I believe the first person to separate conjoined twins in a particular way or something. He did something with conjoined twins. And the guy's completely off the deep end, Lewis, when it comes to the religious nonsense and just the extremist comments about President Obama. So yeah, it's hard to understand why these things happen, but it's pretty common that we see educated individuals on the right take completely anti-science, anti-rational, anti-empiricism positions, whether he is just doing it for votes or not. I think there's a pretty good chance that many of these guys, Lewis, are sort of like, yeah, I don't really know for sure, and I'm just going to say what gets me votes. They don't fully believe it, they don't fully disbelieve it, but they're willing to sort of suspend disbelief for politically viable positions.
Yeah, I think that in some cases you might have someone who doesn't necessarily believe it, but believes that it's important and it wants to, I don't want to say pander, but wants to put creationism and science on even ground because they think it's important and because Christianity and Jesus, blah, blah, blah. And it's incredible how many politicians you have that are senators and congressmen that are on these committees, these science committees and technology committees, who are completely ignorant on both. Like Lindsey Graham, was it, who is on some tech committee and has never sent an email in his life. It's happening all over the place, and it's sad, but it is very common.
It is incredible, yeah. All right, Matt, let's keep them going. Next question, going from Steve to, who will be next? Kurt Washington. Kurt sends in the funniest questions, I have to tell you, and he has a lot of good story leads too. This question is mainly for Lewis. Have you ever heard of Between the Buried and Me or Black Dahlia Murder, and what kind of metal do you listen to? Lewis, take the floor.
Okay, I have heard of both of these bands. I have seen the Black Dahlia Murder, and I kind of dig their newest album. I'm not that into them generally, but I respect them, and they put on a great show, and they have a lot of fun, and I recommend seeing them. I'm familiar with Between the Buried and Me, but I'm not a huge fan. That being said, I have not explored their entire catalog, so I find that the older I get, the more I like progressive metal, though, and I know Between the Buried and Me are pretty progressive. But I'm a big fan of Opeth, Enslaved. I like Isan a lot as of late, and I've been getting into more black metal like Agalok and Blut au Nord, and it's kind of shifting with me, but I like a lot of the progressive stuff. Yeah. That's what I'm into.
A few questions, Lewis, if I may. Can you remind? Well, first, I mean, I have so many. This is bringing up so many agenda items now. Can you remind our audience, when you were in the metal band named Krakatoa, you guys had a couple of albums that have some interesting themes, and much of our audience is new. Can you remind the audience what the sort of thematic elements were in the Krakatoa metal band albums that you played in?
Like the themes? Well, there was the volcano itself, and insects and how brutal they are, and one kind of about malaria, which is pretty brutal. And those were the themes. And I like what I really look for in music is I don't necessarily need to be blown away by the technicality of the guitarist or anything like that, but I just want intelligent music, and I want the lyrics to be intelligent, and I just want that's what I look for, I guess. I want it to have heart. I want it to have feeling, emotion. I want it to be intelligent, and I want it to be heavy as hell.
Last thing on this. I saw yesterday, I got a notification from your band Krakatoa that in deference to the old band members, they are changing their name with the addition of band members that have replaced you and the former drummer, and that they are going to be doing a new theme album. And it escapes me what the topic of this album is. Do you remember? Because it was absolutely brilliant.
I'm not sure. I think it's an outer space related thing, and I can't really say because I'm not in close contact with the band members anymore.
Okay, I have the information here. They have changed the name of the band from Krakatoa to God Eater. And the announcement that they made yesterday is that the new album will be about, let me see here, a sci-fi retelling of the story of the whaling ship Essex, whose crew got stranded and turned to cannibalism. That's certainly some pretty
Yeah,
brutal
incredible
subject
story.
matter.
Yeah, actually, that was my idea way back in the day to do a story, to do a concept album about the Essex, and so they're kind of taking my idea. But that's totally fine. I endorse it, and it is one of the one of the most metal stories you will ever read.
All right, Matt, let's keep it going. We've got about 10 minutes left. We'll fit in as many questions as we can. Al Gons, you've talked about the new studio in Boston. Is it in Boston proper? Are you moving to an existing studio or to generic office space that you will convert to a studio? Is it in Boston proper? It is. Now remember, what is considered Boston proper may not be quite so obvious to many people. For example, Brighton is part of Boston proper, but Somerville is not, or I'm sorry, but Brookline is not part of Boston proper. So there's every indication, Lewis, that the studio is indeed going to be in Boston proper. It is not currently built out as a studio. It is, I don't know that I'd call it generic office space. It's not what you would think of as like from the movie Office Space, like cubicles and drop ceilings and that type of stuff. But it is an office building that will have a variety of different businesses, cool, young, progressive businesses for the most part, and it will be converted into a studio. And the process is ongoing. It's exciting, but it is also very, very hectic and a lot of logistics to manage.
Yes, that weekend where we make the move and switch over to the new space, it's going to be really stressful, really hectic, and we have a lot to do. But it is a relatively large space, and it's a pretty good location. I'm excited about it, but it's going to be a lot of work.
Absolutely. All right, let's keep the questions going. We see Matt indicates that we have another. This is from another Matt, presumably. Will either of you be participating in activities related to the Pope's visit to the U.S. next week? A friend of mine who was sort of my supervisor in an old internship that I did said that he and his family would be anointing each other with oil in commemoration of the Pope's visit. And I believed it, but they're not actually going to be doing that. I am not going to participate, Lewis, in any Pope or papal activities, although I'm told I guess he's going to be in Western Massachusetts, Lewis, and I see Matt Steinberg also mirroring that sentiment. But no, I don't plan on doing anything Pope related. Are you?
No, although I think it might be fun if there were to be some Pope parade like you see, and he's in the little bubble or whatever the hell he does.
Yep.
That might be interesting to watch, and I could stand there maybe with some type of sign trolling him. I don't know. That might be interesting. I'd observe it.
Yes, if it comes to Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, I will make every effort to at least show up. That would be interesting. Next question. We are going to take a couple more questions here. Jeff Fuller. Let's pretend for a second that Trump does get the nomination. Who do you think he would pick for a running mate? I have no idea. Anybody who says he would consider Sarah Palin for a cabinet position is going to be a loose cannon, Lewis, when it comes to picking a vice president. I have no idea who he would choose.
Yeah, that's tough. I think that it would be wise for him to choose a woman. Really, incredibly wise. You have to make sure you don't make the same mistake McCain's people made and pick a complete idiot like Palin. But I think that might do wonders for him. Who? I don't know. I can't really say. The South Carolina, what's her name? Haley?
Nikki Haley, yeah. I think his best
Nikki
shot
Haley?
though would probably be like just a completely milquetoast conservative governor with like semi-religious credentials, because that seems to be like the best balance for Donald Trump.
Yes, that would help. It would be quite a sight. Yeah, I have to say that.
All right, thank you, Jeff, for the question. Matt, let's see the next question. Jason F. David, did anything in particular inspire you to start the show 10 years ago? What has motivated you to stick with it over the years? No, what started the show was complete boredom, essentially. I was a junior at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst, Massachusetts, and a new community radio station started, and I was into politics, and I liked the idea of doing a show. I didn't want to do a sports show because I liked sports, but I didn't care enough about it to make it my entire show. I definitely didn't just want to be DJing and playing songs and stating interesting facts about the artists. So politics was kind of the natural thing. And sticking with it, Lewis, has just been because it has grown. You know, I was recently talking to a friend of mine who also does a show, and they were saying, oh, I'm going to stick with my show indefinitely. I mean, I'm sticking with my show. That's my thing. Would you stick with your show indefinitely? And I said, I'll stick with the show for as long as it's catalyzing an audience and it's growing and it's exciting. If at a certain point the audience starts to decline and it seems that there's not continued growth and interest in what we're doing, I would be willing to hang it up. Now, fortunately, Lewis, it has been 10 years, year after year after year of growth. Not every business, not every show, not every organization can say that, particularly through the recession, rather, that we saw years ago. So the motivation comes from month to month, but certainly year to year, seeing the continued growth of the program.
Yeah, it did start out with boredom, and Dave was real bored, and the show when it first started was really boring. So, you know, it put other people to sleep, but it kept Dave up. It gave him something to do. Yes, you know, you realize you got something and you stick with it, and so that's it.
All right, let's do some rapid fire and see how many questions we can get in the last few minutes. Eliza, when you guys aren't doing the show or prep for the show, what do each of you like to do in your free time? I like to play soccer and basketball. That's what I like to do. I like to play drums, although since leaving New York, not with a band, but I would like to get back into that once we get to Boston. I'm a big fan of reading books, which is, books, that's what they are. And I like traveling.
Traveling, listening to heavy metal, playing it, and going to shows, playing you know, video games, board games, card games, and exercising, watching football. That's it, really.
All right, next question is from Kazuga1234. Do elect, deport, waterboards count as questions? Yeah, this is a game we used to play, elect, deport, waterboard. Huckabee, Trump, and Cruz. Okay, I would elect. Wow, this is actually tough. Well, I would deport. What, you know what, Lewis? I'm going to turn this one over to you first and see what you think.
Okay. Well, just to be poetic, I would deport Trump. Let's send him to another country. And I think I would have to elect Huckabee. He's got some really crazy ideas, and he's insane. You know, he wants to turn this country into a theocracy, but I don't think he'd be able to. So he'd probably be the least harmful president of these three. And I guess we would waterboard Cruz because I would probably get some sick pleasure from that.
All right, I'm going to go in a different route, and this is going to be very different. I would elect Donald Trump because I think that deep down he is actually the least conservative in spite of this insane disjointed character that he's playing. And I think he just flat out wouldn't be able to do that much because half of his ideas seem to violate existing trade policy, law, or other regulations. So I think he would be at a dead end. I would waterboard Ted Cruz, and then I would deport Mike Huckabee to one of the countries that he seems to be very interested in having the U.S. mirror with a theocratic form of government. Now, it would be a different religion than the one he wants, but it would be a theocracy nonetheless. So that's my elect, deport, waterboard. Let's take one more question here. Matt, send it to us. Who is it from? It is from Will Roy. Quick question for Lewis. Does David have a radio voice? Does he speak differently off the air than in person? I have an opinion on this. We'll let Lewis answer first.
You have an opinion. Okay. In my opinion, Dave sounds almost exactly the same off air. I'm not sure if he's doing anything differently. He just pretty much always sounds the same to me. That's his voice. Now, if you go back and listen to some of those first shows, he sounds completely different, and I'm not sure why that is. I think there are probably a lot of factors there. Probably starting with Dave having to be, he was a lot younger at the time. Dave, am I missing something?
I mean, I make an effort if I'm speaking into a microphone to speak louder than I would in sort of normal life, and to speak slightly more slowly and enunciate a little bit more, just to try to have clarity this evening. That's usually my goal. All right, hey, let's do just one more question. We just reached the hour mark. This will be the last question for today. Matt, what do you have for us? Does Matt have anything for us? Maybe not, because I said the last one was the last one. Dan, thoughts on Twitter outrage culture? I'm thinking of Matt Damon, who's done tremendous work for Africa and AIDS charities, universally hated yesterday and today on Twitter for disagreeing with a black woman about the importance of diversity when choosing a director. He's got a long track record of being a good guy. Now everyone, and it seems to be getting cut off there. Yeah, I followed this entire thing with Matt Damon.
Now it says now everyone hates him, and this seems to happen over and over online to various degrees.
We covered Gamergate, so I'm aware of Twitter outrage culture, and it's completely insane. I think it's completely unproductive. It's also relegated to just one corner of the internet, which is only one corner of society. So I think it is mostly unproductive outrage, and I completely agree that it's absurd what has been going on with Matt Damon over the last 24 to 48 hours. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Maybe his comments were not couched in the most nuanced way. Maybe he even deserves a talking to, right? But the Twitter outrage that we've seen is completely crazy and nonsense. Matt Damon is an all-around good guy. He's a Boston guy. He is someone who is clearly on the right side on so many issues, and the Twitter outrage culture I find to be completely nuts. And I've been the victim of it several times, and quite frankly, it doesn't really ruffle my feathers, because after all, internets are serious business, but in 140 characters, they're a little bit less serious. Lewis, anything you would like to say as we wrap up here?
Well, on this question, I've been using Twitter for a month, so I cannot really comment on Twitter outrage culture. Not really. It just it makes things easier for people. That's what it does. There's plenty of misinformation on Twitter, just like everywhere else. But I guess that's it, Dave. This was a good one, and maybe not our highest turnout, but in terms of productivity and questions and participation, I think maybe the best one yet.
Absolutely. Thanks to Matt Steinberg for helping us out. Thanks to everybody who participated. We will archive and post to YouTube the full Spreecast David Pakman Show Town Hall, and we'll see everybody on the show tomorrow.